Welcome to this session on design thinking in careers with Dave Kilmartin from TUD and Mary Rose O'Sullivan from. For many of us, the process of making an informed and meaningful career decision can be daunting. And in this session, Dave and Mary Rose will take us through the 5-step process of design thinking. From a careers perspective, focus on practical aspects that can be used with students. As delegates, we're going to encourage you to use the chat functionality. So Dave and Mary Rose will speak for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then we'll have some moments for questions at the end. So without further ado, I'll invite Mary Rose and Dave onto the stage.
Dave to show up. Okay, thank you for coming along to the session. Thank you for the introduction, Caroline, and welcome to this session on design thinking in careers. And we come to this session as enthusiasts for this approach rather than experts. And as we never stop learning, enthusiasm is a pretty good place to start. I first came across this approach a few years ago when I read Dave Evans and Bill Burnett's first book, Design Your Life, published in 2016. And last year they followed up with their second book, Work-Life Design, which zones in on the subject that is central to all of our works, supporting students to figure out what jobs and careers to work in. The two guys that came up with the approach are both engineers that worked in Silicon Valley designing products for Apple and Electronic Arts before becoming lecturers in design at Stanford. So they were experienced design thinkers. Their motivation was to help their design students in Stanford to find jobs. Sound familiar? Their life design class is now one of the most popular electives in Stanford. The approach has been adopted by many US universities and colleges, and more recently by colleges outside the States. The goal of design thinking is to change the way you think about a problem. So it focuses on first defining the problem and then moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Design thinking stimulates us to break down long-term goals into smaller steps and prompts us to accept uncertainty. As Kingsley said earlier, change is fast and ongoing, so the future is uncertain. Design thinking prompts us to be curious, to be open-minded and to take action, even when we don't know the final result. That's a key point with the design, as we've all met students who are stuck either on a decision or on a goal, and we've met students who avoid making a decision at all to avoid the possibility of failure. What I really like about the approach is that it includes lots of practical that help students tune into what's important to them, to brainstorm possibilities for the future and let go of having to know what they want to do. It's an approach to solve the problem of what will I do next, and it encourages students to be open to accepting opportunities that these guys describe as good enough for now. What Dave and I also really like about this approach is that it encapsulates a number of career theories, Savikas, Lenton Brown, social cognitive career theory, Crumples, and our friends Holland and Hansen are also in there. We also recognize important psychological constructs that are valuable for career, such as identity, mindset, motivation, and agency. And best of all, it's wrapped up in something that sounds interesting. It sounds maybe even cool, work-life design. How many of us at 20 or 23 could articulate what we were passionate about or what we wanted to do? The life design approach takes this as a very good starting point, and it helps students through exercises and discussions to process their experiences and explore possibilities for the future, and without noticing it, become proactive in career management. So this will prepare them to respond to the uncertain future. So we've included this in MTU in a number of programs with PhD students, with mature students, and with a Next Steps workshop for fourth year students in particular. And it works really well for groups of 15 to 20, particularly postgrads and mature students. So let's dive in now and take a closer look. So What is design thinking? So design thinking is a methodology to help solve messy problems. It takes a human needs approach, and we're all in that work of working with humans and helping humans. So getting to the human needs aspect is really important. So the process of design thinking creates lots and lots of ideas using a few different techniques. And then it tests those ideas in a hands-on way. So Dyson had 5,200 and something designs for the vacuum before the actual final one that went into production. So the first idea is rarely the one that we go with. So transferring this into careers, next slide, please, Dave. If we we look at the 5-stage process here of design thinking: empathizing, understanding and relating to our own experience, identifying negative thoughts, and identifying what might be the things that are getting in the way. So the mindset piece is really important, empathizing with that place. Then defining what is the core problem. So the goal is to identify actionable problems. So a lot of the time we meet students and the problems are actually more their life circumstances or things they can't change, which these guys describe as gravity problems, or they're not actionable problems, they're circumstances. So it's clarifying what is a problem and what is an actionable problem. That's what we're looking for, the actionable problems. Then we get into ideating, thinking of lots of possible futures, no limits, the more ideas, the better. And then prototyping some of those. So you recognize already a lot of careers work is within this 5-stage process already. So site visits, career interviews, but it's getting to do a lot more of that. And it fits with what Kingsley just mentioned about networking, getting ourselves out there and becoming known, help the students becoming known for what they're learning and becoming experts in. And then testing out a few options. What is the experience of the work like? So this has, and then we can go back to the beginning. If the experience wasn't as we expected, we can go right back again, start with empathizing where we are now. So it's a repeating process. So this evolution, the reality now is the global economy, rapid multiple work transitions. So we're going from career planning might have been what we did before because the future was predictable, but now we need to progressively design and build our work life right through our careers. Knowledge and skills, that might have been enough to go into a defined vocational area, but if we're going into if we're not sure what area we're going into, we need to reflect on our competencies, values, aspirations, and then the context of work keeps changing, so that's why we have to keep repeating the process. And instead of making a particular decision at a point in time, we're resolving problems around work, which continues right through the life, matching our needs to changing work contexts. And then what we need for the approach is being adaptable, flexible, and lifelong learners. So just jumping on to a couple of, this is an example you can come back to later, getting the students to find their work-life compass. What does work mean to them? And the starting point is where you are now. That's very important. It's the place you are right now is the starting point. So go to the next slide, Dave. So if you'd like to get a pen and paper, very quickly draw 3 rectangles. Think about your job you're doing now. So they propose 3 key factors are important that make work meaningful. Money, the impact your work has, and how much it allows you to express yourself. So if you have the 3 rectangles, do it a little bit of a quick audit on your own job now, how you rate it for money, how you rate it for impact, and how you rate it for it allowing you to express you. So a key point, there's no good or bad combination. What is important to you is the only factors that count. Okay, next slide. If you go to the next slide, Dave, thank you. So this is an exercise, navigating ambiguity. On the previous slide, please, Dave, sorry, is the, this is a key skill and what the guys call a super ability, being able to navigate ambiguity. So the future's uncertain, so being able to navigate that uncertainty, endure the discomfort, and then explore parallel possibilities, and they call this a super ability. And this is a student who did the program in the States, and they were asked to come up with a metaphor for what does uncertainty feel like to you, or ambiguity. And they came up with their own metaphor. So navigating a corn maze in the fog, because you make your decisions, but you don't know what's around the corner. So very apt, encouraging students to come up with their own metaphor. Okay, so I'll hand over to Dave now, and that's an exercise you can do yourself afterwards. And I'll hand over to Dave. Can't hear you, Dave. You're on mute.
Brilliant. So you can hear me now, okay? Great. So just picking up on what Mary Rose was saying, really, I suppose I'm coming up with some exercises that I think we can use around each of the stages with students in a classroom or in a one-to-one setting, and just focusing on the empathise phase, so that understanding of self and you know, what drives you, but you know, getting deep down and dirty about your own thinking and your thought process about what you can or can't do, and be they biases around career and what career ideas that you have. So one simple idea would be to you know, ask students what kind of pressures are put upon them in terms of making good career decisions. Who or what puts that pressure on? And just very quickly there, some of the 5 Ps that I've come up with. You know, we often see this in our work on a daily basis, the way students make decisions by external factors that are at play: parents, peers, politicians, you know, public messages, and the notion that you have to have passion. One of the key elements of design thinking is that we don't have any singular passion. You know, we can live authentic and productive lives in so many different domains and ways. So passion can often be emergent from experience. So it's just for you guys to, when you're working with students on these, to, if some of these things are mentioned, to begin to question, because these are impacting the way in which they're thinking about self and career. And another simple exercise would be, even a simple exercise to get students to think about hopes and fears. What are their hopes and fears? So again, you're creating a deeper level of self-awareness with the thinking about self and career, and about internal and external factors. What are the key challenges facing, you know, for me in making a good career decision as a third level student? Write the key challenges. So you're making the thinking real now and putting it down on paper. Another kind of powerful exercise, and you often think about this in terms of theory of careers. We ask people with theories of careers, but a simple, you know, get students to come up with a metaphor for career, be it an image, be it a line of poetry. So you get people coming up with ideas of the escalator or the crazy paving, and just to get them to, it helps them to, you know, develop their understanding and awareness of their own thinking and assumptions around career, because that's the key starting point with Empathise. From then we can begin to move towards the defining the problem. And one last exercise I think it could be done. Again, you'll have your own ideas around these, and this goes back to the money impact expression exercise that Mary Rose was discussing with you. You know, get students to make a career. You make a career statement and ask students to agree or disagree. You could make this a kinesthetic exercise in a room where they move across from one side of the room to another if you had that facility. And what are the reasons why? You could do the same for impact and expression. So expression is the most important thing in career. And an exercise I've used a lot. Again, it gets deeper down into the thinking and their own views of their work and life perspectives, is free writing about what career success for me is. And you know, it's like the kid in the back of the car is really important. Is, you know, they ask the question, why is that, and why is that, and why is that, and you get fed up and you just say it just bloody is. But it's a great question to ask, because it gets you behind the presenting issue down to the real issue. And I talk a lot about that. You know, we see it with students a lot ourselves, and the way in which students present with something, but actually the real issue is something deeper. And design thinking is really at the core of trying to get deeper below the presenting issue. So then you're moving towards the defined phase, you know. So based on the reflections of the Empathise, your goal is really to, you know, to develop and define the challenge or conundrum that have to be solved. For some students, it's, do I diversify or not? Am I happy where I'm at in this career trajectory? Or I want to train and become a practicing artist. So that becomes a conundrum to be solved, and then to work on through the next ideation and the prototyping phase. So it gets students to present it in an actionable way. A key thing is the bias to action, that you have to present the minimum actionable problem. So as Mary Rose mentioned, you don't want the gravity problems, because you have to accept some things that can't be changed. And the danger is, if if you get stuck in a gravity problem, it'll just suck you into a vortex. So it has to be an actionable problem that you feel you have some autonomy over. And the very action of, I think, of doing this, students can begin, when they start to articulate the problems, they're getting deeper, and they're beginning to, you know, reflect on themselves, and that can help them refine what the key issues are and help them become more realistic and prompt to take action. So we've all done this ideation stuff. We've done brainstorming, mind maps, all that, you know, putting post-its up on a board and refining. So just think of any other creative ways that you can begin to support people to resolve problems. But one simple thing would be just to ask them to generate a list of as many career futures for themselves as possible. And it's open-ended, it's creative, it's letting it flow, and set blocks. And just get them to work in twos or threes, just to talk to each other about why they chose what they did. And again, something we've done, and people will be aware of this, to pick one area of interest. For example, I'm really passionate about sport. I see that in one of my own kids, and he thinks he's not going to be a sportsman. So you start to brainstorm, what are all the areas associated with sports? We're doing a career areas brainstorm, just kind of a mandala chart. What are the, and you can see how Holland would fit in here, for example, with some of the skill sets and knowledge sets and interest levels. So you're beginning to open up opportunity here. But sport is still at the heart of it. So you're giving expression to your fundamental interest, but it can be given expression in many different ways. And that's the great thing about design thinking as well, is that openness, and that you can express your skill set and your knowledge and your motivations in many different ways once you overcome and understand your thinking processes around it. So then you move into the prototype phase, and I'm conscious we're moving very fast here with time. Just Caroline, we're doing okay with time. We're doing a few minutes, yeah. As Kinsley so eloquently said this morning, getting curious, getting deep down and dirty and trying stuff. That's a kind of a mantra for design thinking. And you see it when designers get involved in new products. You know, they get curious, talk to people and try stuff. And they talk about the minimal viable product. We're talking about the minimum actionable problem. So then a key thing, one very nice exercise to have is Odyssey planning. And the core elements of Odyssey planning here are to pick three of the options. That could be three elements from the Mandala chart, and chart how could those careers unfold over the next 5 years. So you're just putting it out there into 5 different stages. Give it a title. You know, that could be to become a practicing artist, or live as a practicing artist. Rank each plan under 4 key scales. The resources to fulfill it, that you have some resources. You may not have them all, you have some, and you might need others. How much you like it, so the likability scale. How confident you feel about it, so that level of confidence on that kind of continuum. And whether it is coherent with your general perspectives of work and life. So going back to that impact expression, and finance issues. So there'll obviously be some ambiguity around it, but there'll be some level of compromise as well. So just saying what the Odyssey planning does, I've mentioned this earlier, we'll move through this quickly. It's just it unlocks empowerment, it helps you be creative, and it can help you challenge limiting beliefs. So it's that letting go and being free and be open with ambiguity and uncertainty. So here's an example of just one of the exercises. You can download these. We've got some links at the end to show you where to download these. So this is the 5-year plan, so to speak, and it has the little scale for resources around for resources, likability, confidence, and coherence. And then you've also put in 3 questions which you plan to address through the course of your work, which in this prototyping. So here's an example of someone who wants to become a travel blogger. And again, you see in the early stages, we're beginning to prototype. You're interviewing people and doing all the things that we know and we support students doing, in terms of, it could be shadowing people, researching the industry, networking with the right people, finding about the future orient of where the opportunities will be, etc. But you can see then over the period of time, they're beginning to action the incremental stages and move towards the goal of being nationally recognized travel authority. And that's emergent and can change over time. So this was the person's rating. It was on a scale of 1 to 100 over each of the scales in terms of resources, likability, confidence, and coherence. And a couple of the questions they have. We all have these questions, especially when we're planning for the future. To have enough time to devote to it, and building the brand. Can I create a large enough following to make money? Again, the challenge around the finance. And when I lose my independence, if I make money by promoting certain brands, and a value system could be kicking in there. So there are all questions that we have, and we all have different types of questions around, plans and goals and ambitions for ourselves. So it's a nice exercise to do. What you do is you just go back to you create 3 of those, and obviously the first one is probably the one that you're more driven towards, but it's been open to the second and third plans as well, because when you begin to prototype some of the ideas there, by the very act of prototyping and engaging in the world in different ways, it can help deepen your awareness, and your plan may change and gravitate in new ways. And once you have that openness to experience, a bit like the planned happenstance, with your openness to opportunity, luck will fall your way. So that's really, really critical. So and being, having that freedom to try it, and that confidence to let go, and the freedom to fail in a way, and not be scared of that really opens doors to you. Acceptance of that this may not work out can really open doors to you. So then when you begin to test it, it's that iterative cycle, as Mary Rose spoke about. You test, reflect, repeat. So when you test something out in the world, you get feedback on it. Is it working? Is it not working? Is it being inhibited the way it was? Or something new about myself? Or do I need to revisit the process? So it's just giving you that iterative cycle. And they have just one nice thing around the whole decision-making process. And again, we work a lot with students around decision-making. So in their overall flow around decision-making, you gather and create with what we've spoken about, gather the information, test your prototypes, have conversations, narrow down your options, and have one can't-lose decision. And so just a bit of feedback in the background if somebody has a mic on. Then choose. And the key thing around choosing is not to just choose. We all don't choose on a very rational basis, and we know that ourselves. Personally, I'm working with students. There's a whole other elements of the head, heart, and the gut comes into play. And Daniel Goleman will talk around that. So you get a feeling that you've made the right decision sometimes as well. So it's that mix of the rational, based on the evidence and the information that you're getting, as well as how good it feels to you both in the gut and the heart. And then a critical thing about that letting go of choices you didn't make. It's really important, because again, if you start to think, if only I did, you won't commit to the choice that you've made. So that commitment to it and letting go about the alternatives, let them emerge. As you often said, the best is the enemy of many betters. So you always won't get the best, but choose the one you can, given your circumstances and your experience in life, and what you think is right at that point in your life. Try it, and then go back through the iterative cycle around the design thinking. And just to finish on a quote from the authors of the book: we all contain enough energy and talents and interests to live many different types of lives, all of which could be authentic and interesting and productive. Asking which life is best is asking a silly question. It's like asking whether it's better to have hands or feet. And we'll leave it there for questions. We've just got some resources, and we do have some extra slides which we've taken out with some other ideas and exercises and stuff. So we'll put together a larger kind of presentation to circulate to the conference. So thank you all for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed and got something out of that.
Thank you, Dave and Mary Rose. God, that was so good. It feels like we really tried to squish it in. I see one question there, and we probably only have time for one, because I know we're due to welcome somebody else on stage now in literally 1 minute. But can I ask you, do you find that these work best as an in-class activity or as a homework activity?
They can work, I take that if you don't mind. They can work in both. Like, they can work with the groups. Now, we've had the virtual world, the virtual delivery, and people were given some of the exercises to do themselves, and then discussed the findings. And what we're seeing is a change in thinking. I never thought about that. I never thought about such and such. So I think it is prompting this thinking, which is what we'd like to see happening.
And I think you can learn a lot from others as well, Caroline. Just quickly, I think you can learn a lot from others. And if others help you critique your ideas, then you're opening up to new ideas. So to have that kind of mentoring approach as well, as Kingsley mentioned this morning, is a good way to go.
And we did use it in MTU for students to suggest ideas to each other in a group in the mature student program, and that worked really well. That ideas they hadn't thought about, others were seeing potential for them to do. So it's really powerful, taking it away from just an individual pursuit to bringing more of a group community into it.
Thank you. And I know I speak for everybody when I say we'd love the slides. I even see in my own team chat everyone saying, oh, we'd love to see the slides. So look, I'm going to hand back over to Angela, and thank you both very